All right, everybody. So we're going to get started here for our Solid Edge 2024 webinar. Just wanted to thank everybody for taking time out of your day to join us. We really appreciate everyone being here. Today we have Jason Walker, one of CamLogic's application engineers, who's going to be presenting and walking us through these slides and demonstrations. Before we get started, I wanted to provide a summary of CamLogic for those of you that may have joined and are not familiar with our organization. CamLogic is a holistic engineering solution provider, leveraging PLM software, manufacturing, and quality control. Our success is a result of a long-standing commitment to our customers, our region, and the industries we serve. Our business model, or wheel, as you see here and in our video before the webinar, illustrates our go-to market approach in 4 value-driven offerings. We have Conceive, which is our engineering and design team. Develop, which includes our Siemens software offering. Manufacture. We are a tier 1 supplier that leverages both the Conceive and Develop to deliver customer solutions. And then we have Capture, which is our quality control group that makes sure those solutions are of the highest quality. Now, I know everybody's super excited to check out these new functions and enhancements in Solid Edge. So let me just run through the agenda real quick, and then I will hand things over to Jason. So some of the topics we are going to be talking about today include user interface, part modeling, assembly modeling, PMI and MBD, migration translation, and CAD Direct, Siemens Mechanical Design Bundle. And then we have a couple quick announcements that we are going to be running through before moving on to our open Q&A session. And in regards to that open Q&A, feel free to type your questions in the chat as we go, and we will be sure to answer those during that time. And with that being said, Jason is going to take it from here.
Thanks, Ashley, for the introduction. Like she said, my name is Jason Walker. I am an application engineer here at CamLogic. Excuse me. I've been working with Solid Edge for close to 4 years now, and I'm sure I've worked with plenty of you on the, listening in on support, and I'm here to give you guys a run through on all the changes that they've added in Solid Edge 2024. Keep in mind that this list isn't an exhausted or complete list of changes that they've added. We picked these changes based on user interest and, both from our engineers and some of you on the phone. We picked the biggest ones and the ones that we thought would have the most impact to keep everything down to a 1-hour presentation. So the first improvement doesn't really fall into any of the other categories, so I kind of left it on its own here. It's a pretty significant improvement to large models. You'll see the largest improvement in your largest assemblies, roughly 9 times in terms of performance improvement when it comes to any dynamic visualization. So when you're moving the model, panning, zooming, rotating, you'll see quite a large improvement from comparing previous versions to Solid Edge 2024. You can see that example assembly that we have in the bottom there is each one of those machines is a fully assembled large piece of machinery there, and even with an assembly file like that, you can still rotate the model around quite well. That brings us into the user interface section. There's been quite a few changes over the user interface. I don't know if you guys remember the Solid Edge 2023 update. There was a pretty big overhaul. A lot of the changes here are kind of improving on that overhaul to make Solid Edge 2024 even better, but it retains all of or most of the changes that occurred in Solid Edge 2023 and just kind of adds on to them. So the first one here is with the vertical command bars and Pathfinder. So for both the command bars and the Pathfinder, they've added some relaxed spacing, just to make things a little bit more readable. When you're moving the Pathfinder or the command bars around your screen and you want to stick them to either the left or like the top left corner, that magnetization has been improved. So when you want that to rest on that side, it will stay there and live there a little easier. And then anytime you select a new command, the command bar, the Proho command bar will resize itself or refit. This will make it so that when you go from a shorter menu to a larger menu or vice versa, the command bar still fits and you can see all of the options, or it's not too big and there's a bunch of extra white space. So just a little quality of life improvement, helps with navigating through Solid Edge. A couple of other improvements here with the context toolbar. They changed the UI a little bit. They kind of made the little grip dots. You don't really need them. You can just click on any white space on the bar to move it around. They changed the scaling a little bit so that if you're using a higher resolution monitor or you have the scaling in Windows set to a higher amount, it will increase the spacing, enlarge the icons, and it'll scale with your Windows scaling and resolution a bit better than it did in Solid Edge 2023. It's also just 27% larger overall. It'll help with, again, visibility, usability, and it just makes it more convenient. And they also added a little fade in, fade out effect. It'll help make it a little bit more noticeable when it's available. Another sort of UI or user experience change is the object action commands in the draft environment. So in other environments, this has been around where you can select the object such as the face or the part in assembly and part environments. And then you can select the command or action that you want to perform. They've added that workflow inside the draft environment. So you can click on a line, then click the dimension. It just makes things a little bit quicker, saves you a little bit of time. You have to go up to your ribbon a little bit less, especially if you're using that context toolbar. Another convenient change is this recent document preview. You can access this through your quick access toolbar at the top of your screen. So instead of having to go File, Open to see what documents you've had open recently, you just click once at the top and you can get a list horizontally, like the image below, of all your recent documents. Just helpful in your everyday workflow and helps get through and see what you've been working on or had open recently. Another great quality of life change, in my opinion, it's due, is an options dialog search box. So when you're in the options, you're trying to find an option, you may or may not know whether it's there, but you're not sure where it is. You can search, you can type into this search box to find the option you're looking for, and it will take you to where, whichever page it's on and highlight it for you. They've also redone or improved on some command bars, various ones. The two I've added here as an example are the curve and smart dimension command bars. They just redid the layouts, made some buttons more clear, redid some icons, some drop downs where it's appropriate, so that it's a little easier to use and a little bit more readable, and what Solid Edge is expecting is easier to understand. So that does it for the UI changes. Here we're going to go into part modeling and some of the changes that they did for that environment. The first is with family of parts. There's actually a very large number of changes to family of parts. The first, I could do, half of this presentation on family of parts alone. So I kind of just compiled it all into this one slide here. Everything you see on the left, materials, file properties, etches, flat patterns, etc., multi-body modeling, that has all been added to family of parts. There are various options that are in the family of parts. Different family members can have materials that are different from one another. File properties can be different from one another. So on and so forth. If you have any specific questions on family of parts and what changes have been introduced, feel free to contact us and we can go into the details. Another useful change that they've added, and it's both a change and a new command. They did kind of add an extra command here that I think is really useful. It is mirror, or and the new command would be save as mirrored part. I think this will be really helpful for people in automotive. I know there's a lot of left hand and right hand parts. So for the existing mirror command, they've added an option to remove the original. So if you have a part and you make a copy of it and select remove original, it will mirror that original part, but then also remove it so that you're only left with the mirrored part. And then save as mirrored part is very similar. The difference is that so it removes the original from the saved file. So you have the first part you made, maybe it's your left-hand part, and then you save as a mirrored part, and it creates a new part file that is a mirrored version of that left-hand part. So I'll show an example here. So I'm actually going to do this twice. The first thing I'm going to do is do a regular mirror here. But the first thing I'm going to do is keep it linked to the original and save it as a mirrored part. And you'll see here with this that I have it linked to the previous part. And so I only get a part copy. And then any changes that I were to make in the original would be reflected in that mirrored part. Now this time I'm going to do another mirror, but I'm going to mirror over a plane that I made in advance. And this one I'm going to leave unlinked. And you'll see when I open this new part with the unlinked that I get my full feature tree rather than just a part copy, so that I can continue to edit this part separately from the original. So if I make a left and right hand part that are similar but not identical over a plane, you can make one, mirror it, and then do whatever few changes need to be done to complete the other side. Another really interesting tool, and one that took me a second to get used to, but I find it very useful now, is this lasso selection. You can use the button in the ribbon to switch to the lasso. There's also some shortcuts that will allow you to use it. And depending on directional, if you like this option, you can change the behavior from overlapping or inside only, where whatever you're selecting has to be inside the entirely inside your lasso. But what this does is just speeds up selection. Sometimes, especially when you have really busy parts or really busy assemblies that have a lot of little features or little parts, it can be hard to select exactly what you want. And this lasso selection makes it a lot easier. You can literally draw around just the things you want to capture. And it makes finding your selection quite a bit easier than previously. Another is a change to the feature sketch editing workflow. So this is particularly in the ordered environment more so, although it could still be used in synchronous in some circumstances. You will have a edit. So the edit feature sketch will behave slightly differently than before, where instead of going back to the beginning and completing the feature, it will go back to that feature and recompute immediately, allowing you to see what your changes did. Then if you needed to tweak it a little bit more, you could go back in and adjust the sketch further, or maybe there are other options within that feature that you need to edit. So if there's iterative changes that you need to make within a specific feature, or maybe you make an adjustment and it's not quite right yet, it makes that workflow of going in and readjusting the sketch a lot smoother because you don't have to go re-enter that workflow each time you want to make a change. The next command here has existed. It's just a change to the subtract command. It's totally optional. I think this is a very useful change for those that are in, maybe molds and packaging. I think use this a lot, those industries. I think this can save a lot of time. Basically, it's an option to select and remove internal or unwanted regions, more specifically. So I'll show that example here. So it uses the same subtract command that has been here in the past. You select your tool and then your target and then your tool. But then there's this third optional step where you select the regions that you don't want to keep. So you can see that that's the preview before the optional step. And now I want to get rid of these internal regions, and I can either select them manually or use the select internal regions checkbox to select them all. And now all those have been removed. This can be a pretty big time saver. Previously, that would require an additional command for each of those to remove them all. And so it's one of those little changes that can really speed up your process. So that does it for the major commands in the part environment, major changes there. Now we're going to move on to assembly. The first change they did at assembly is a new command in the express route environment, actually, for trim tubes. There's a couple of really nice features that came with this. So what it does is when you have two intersecting tubes, and this is all based on the 3D sketch geometry that drives the tubes. So if they intersect in that 3D sketch geometry, then you can use this command on them. But what it does is it puts a hole in the primary tube and then cuts the secondary tubes, like you can see in the second image, down to be flush with the inside of the primary tube. So the other thing that it does is, again, this is based on that 3D sketch geometry. If the two tubes or the geometry intersect on the ends, it will, instead of doing like a normal intersection, it will do a miter. The only caveat to this is that they do have to be the same diameter for it to work. But as long as they're the same diameter and they meet at the ends, it will miter rather than do a trim. So I have an example for this one, just this compressor tank with a pipes on it. And what I wanted to show here with this draft document is that we have the inside volume and flat length populated here, because by using the part features, you can actually, the changes occur in the part, and that will allow the data in that draft or that table to update. And so the length of the tubes and the volume of the tubes will update accordingly. I switched to this wireframe view just to make it easier to see the result on the inside of these pipes. So you can see that they all got cut to length so that they're flush with the inside of that primary tube. And then I'll switch back to a shaded view here so that we can see down through the pipe. You can see that none of the secondary pipes are sticking into that primary pipe. I'm also going to come over here and do a quick update on this draft so you can see that those values do update after that trim has been performed. And then the other thing I'm going to do is show the mitering feature. We used some pipes to make sort of like the footing of this compressor tank here. And these ones I'm going to just do as regular assembly features. and I just select the 2 pipes or tubes and accept it with a right click, and then you get a miter. Like I said before, it does require that all of the tubes are the same diameter, and then as long as they are intersecting at the ends of the sketch geometry, they will the trim tubes command will create the miter. Then I just figured I'd show by updating the sketch that the miters will show up here as well. Another thing that they've added to the assembly environment is the ability to reorder assembly features. So this has existed inside the ordered environment for quite some time. You can rearrange the order in which the features occur in your history-based model. So now that's available at the assembly level. Assembly features are always ordered, and now they can be reordered as well, just like you would inside the ordered part environment. One thing to keep in mind is, and it's the same rules as in the ordered environment, you can't have a feature that is moved before its parent. So if you have a protrusion or an extrusion that has a hole in it, you can't move the hole above that because you have to have something there to put a hole through it. So just another useful change that can help reorganize or change the order of operations for your assembly features, and can kind of help get the results you're looking for. Another really useful change, in my opinion, is this suppress conflicting relationships. This is a new box that shows up whenever you're trying to place a part or whenever you're applying relationships that conflict with existing one. I'll show it here in a demo. I think it's easier to see than it is to hear. So first thing I'm going to do is try to put an axial line on the 2 holes and mount this device to the plate behind it. And when I do that, you'll see that the resolve relationship conflict box appears, and this is a new dialog box. So at the top, it's displaying what relationship it was unable to perform. So in this case, it was the axial align. It also gives me all of the other existing relationships. And what I can do is, if needed, if I can't identify it just from looking, I can go through and suppress each one by one, or in any combination, to find out what I need to do to make that axial line work. In this case, it was a parallel between the top of that plate, which isn't actually flat. And I'm just going over here to make sure that the other hole is still aligned. It also works with adjustable parts, which I'm going to show with this tube and the fitting. I'm going to align the 2 tubes together. I get another conflict. And in this case, it is an axial line between the fitting on the tube and the lighter one, which is the wrong fitting in this case. So once I apply the right, suppress the correct relationship, the axial line that I applied will be correct, and then I can finish this by doing a mate between the fitting or between both fittings. And the tube updates accordingly, and this assembly is complete. Another really beneficial change, one that I think is really nice, convenient for everybody, is search strings. They made a couple of changes here. So the first thing is, when you're searching your Pathfinder, in previous versions, you would only be able to search based on the beginning of the part name. So if you typed in bolt, it would only search for things that start with bolt. Now, if you type in bolt, it will look for anything that has bolt anywhere in the name, whether it's the beginning, the middle, the end, it doesn't matter. As long as that string is somewhere in the part name, it will find it. Additionally, in the Pathfinder libraries, model view palette, and a couple of other search bars, you will be able to use wildcards or an asterisk, and this will help you do more complex searches. So the example on the top right there is if I search for B asterisk ring, it'll find the blower mounting ring because it starts with a B, and it doesn't matter what's in between that, ring is somewhere else after the B. These are really helpful just when you're trying to find things, whether it's through a large part library, whether you have several hundred parts in your Pathfinder, or a bunch of model views. It can really help speed things up so you're not having to manually search for things. The other really helpful thing with that is I know a lot of companies and organizations will have their, whether it's based on the project or various other things, the beginning of their part numbering scheme is often the same for everything or for many parts in an assembly. This will help resolve that because let's just say maybe it's the last 3 or 4 digits that are unique or the unique identifier, that you can search for just that now. You don't have to have that, maybe it's the first 6 digits that are, have common or other parts that are similar to it. Those are the significant changes that we found in, or that I found in the assembly environment. Here we're going to go through some of the PMI and MBD or model-based definition. This is actually pretty big for CamLogic itself, and I think other companies could benefit from this as well. CamLogic is we are a paperless company. Our manufacturing and engineering teams, we don't really use drawings anymore. We leverage the free viewer that comes with Solid Edge, and we use the model-based definition to, communicate the, what is needed for an assembly or a part, but we're manufacturing it. That free viewer allows anybody who's on the, shop floor and the manufacturing team can see the assemblies that were made or the parts that were made by engineering, and see them in 3D with all the necessary, PMI that that are needed to manufacture that part. Some of the changes there to this is first with auto dimension, they added some support for both ovals and oval shape cutouts as well as slots. So the auto dimension command will locate both of those and add. It will also add location dimensions on them. It also has a total count for radial, fillet, and chamfers. This is important because in the previous version, if anybody's used this, one of the flaws was that it would just add a dimension for each of those features. So if you had 8 chamfers on a part, you would get 8 dimensions that are all identical, one on each chamfer. Now it has a total count. The other thing that they've added is that you can run this with both with 1 or 2 datums rather than 3. This helps with round or turned parts more specifically. Because you only have the single datum and there's no other flat planes to really click on, you can, this will allow you to still dimension them kind of in that, similarly to that example on the right. They also added a bit of a time-saving feature, especially if there's already dimensions on your part. You can use the manual feature selection to select specific features that you want to dimension rather than the entire part. The other thing they've added is the option for linear stacked dimensions, which is just another dimension style. So coordinates on the left, linear stacked dimensions are on the right. In previous versions, coordinate dimension was the only option, so they've added that stacked option. I'm going to show a demonstration of how this works here. I have a part here that doesn't have any dimensions on it, and I'm able to pick the datum planes that I'm going to base my dimensions on. In this case, I'm going to leave it as the default, which is coordinate dimensions. And you can see when I zoom in here that the fillet dimension has like a 24 times and then radius 2, rather than having a radius 2 dimension on every single chamfer, or not chamfer, fillet that's on that part. This is another example. The first time I ran through it, I did a coordinate dimension just to show that it works. I'm also going to run it again, but this time I'm going to do it as a stacked dimension, just to show how it's changed. And yeah, you just set it in the options. You can also set it to the default if you prefer that style. It does take a second. You do still have to select your datum planes, and when you're done, it will give you, it will dimension all the features on your part. Pretty big time saver for most designers that I've spoke with, and I think it helps with some of those almost busy work-like tasks. And I'm going to show that again here on this part. I did stacked dimensions. I'm also going to run the arrange dimension command to help clean up a couple of these that got placed a little funny. Yeah, I think both those commands, which I'll show arrange dimensions shortly, but I think both commands are very helpful, huge time savers for most designers and engineers that need to communicate how something would be manufactured. The next one is dimension checker. This is another great feature. Helps with making sure that things have been dimensioned both correctly but also completely. It will recognize both over constrained features. It will recognize any dimensions that are missing their tolerances, and of course, if everything's fully constrained, it will color code that as well. I'll show that one here in this demonstration. This part probably looks a little familiar, but in this one, there's a couple of errors on here. So I pick my datum planes, and once I accept it, it will color code some of the dimensions. You can see that there's a yellow one to mark that it's under constrained. There's also the two pink or purple colored ones that are showing as they are missing dimensions. So I'm going to go add the dimensions into those. I did a plus or minus half millimeter on both of those dimensions. And once I'm done with that, I will be able to run the dimension checker again, which I didn't have to do. I could have left it up and refreshed it, but it was easier to see what I was doing by closing it. So I'm going to run the dimension checker again. And then once it's done processing, it won't have those missing tolerances in there anymore. It's only the one on the chamfer. The other thing is that there's a couple of under constrained features that are highlighted in yellow there. So I'm going to run the auto dimension command and set it to stack to match the rest of the model, and then select specifically the features that I want to dimension rather than the entire part. Now that that's complete, I can run a range dimension just to clean up the positioning and make it easier to read, and then run my dimension checker again. All right. You can see that the missing dimensions are under constrained isn't expandable because there are no under constrained features anymore. And this part has been completely dimensioned here. I've used it twice already, but another addition or command that's been enhanced was a range dimension. This was only usable previously with stacked dimensions. Now it can be used with coordinate dimensions. It also can be used with any model that has both. So if you have a combination of both coordinate and stacked dimensions, similar to that, or similar to this part here, it will arrange both. One thing to keep in mind is that it does prioritize the coordinate dimensions first, so those ones will generally be closer to the model. But yeah, both are, it supports and will arrange both types of dimensions, and it will also arrange a model that has both. And I can show a quick example here. This is a part, very simple, but it does have a few dimensions on it. And rather than having to manually move all of those dimensions around so that it's easier to see and read, I can do a quick arrange dimension, and it looks pretty good. You can see that this model has both stacked or linear dimensions and coordinate dimensions on it. Another thing they added was the fit class and tolerance values. These have been added directly into features in previous versions, so that you didn't have to do a lot of the declare a lot of these things in the drafting environment. Now it's added right to the feature, and they've also made it so that that information can be retrieved through callouts, feature callouts, etc. So if you have any of the tolerance types or fit classes in that list on the left there, these are retrievable and will display in your feature callouts just by adding it in. They also added a few new commands. One of them, like hide PMI, is actually inside other commands. It's just a useful button when you have a lot of PMI or dimensions that are kind of in the way. Sometimes when you're selecting things on your model and you have a lot of dimensions on it, it can be hard to select what you're trying to. So if you just hide them all, it makes it a bit easier. They also added common model views, which is a new command, which will automatically create some of the common model views, only the ones you select, of course. And examples are like the top, right, or isometric view. And it will create those model views in the 3D environment with any of the existing dimensions added in. Anything that would apply to that view that is already on the model will be added into that model view. There's also an update model views button that makes that process a bit easier. In previous versions, when the model view palette was released, it was a little bit, you had to sort of leave the model view and then go back into the view you wanted to update, and then it would update properly. Now you can just click the update button in all of them, select the views you want to update, and they will update. Here I'm going to run that common model views command. You can see all of the options in here. I'm only going to use the front and left in this case. You can see that it created the model view in my model view palette, and then it included dimensions that were already on this assembly and the parts, so that and it included the relevant ones in the model view. I can still add, additional dimensions that I think are necessary, and then once I'm done, I can use that update model views button or command to update the thumbnail and the model view on the right. So now that I've got this completed, I will go select the update model views command, click OK, and it will update both. And you can see on the right, it's kind of small, hard to see, but the 2 dimensions that I added to this model view have been populated. This is important because if you ever do need to make drawings, you can actually make them straight from the model views you already have. So if I wanted to, it would only take me 1 click to convert this model view. Even though this is 3D, I can convert this to a 2D drawing or draft. So those are the changes for PMI. We do have a few changes in the migration, like translation and CAD Direct family here. The first is in a few changes for migration. If anybody needs to works with some other file formats, whether those are from suppliers or wherever you get them, these will be helpful. The first is with SolidWorks and Inventor files, specifically ones that include flat patterns or and folded models, I should say. This will make it so that both configurations will come into Solid Edge, and the flat pattern will be in the same file as the folded version of that model. One thing to keep in mind is that if you were to change the folded model in Solid Edge after migration, the flat pattern is no longer the flat pattern that migrated over would no longer be associative. But if you ever made any drawings of the flat patterns in a 2D environment, that would still be associated. So it's a helpful change if you do use either or get either of these 2 data types and work with sheet metal a lot. They also added a couple of things in the translation. The first is the CGR or CATIA graphical representation. These types of files can now be imported into Solid Edge. This is something that doesn't require CATIA either. There is an add-on license required to do this, but if you're unfamiliar with CGR, that would be like CATIA's version or equivalent of like a JT file. It's mostly visualization, but you don't need to have CATIA installed to import. They also added some options for the Creo adapter as well as STL. In Creo, they added options to import both curves and hidden entities. They also changed the term free surfaces to just surfaces. So you can import all those things. And then for STL files, you can actually export files that don't have solid bodies now. So if you want to import just surfacing, or whether it's construction bodies or construction sheets in this case, that is an option. So those are 2 toggles that I have circled there. They're to give you the option to export just or include the sheets that are not fully solid bodies. Another change is for exporting files that have filled PMI. This is mostly, if you send things to JT files and then maybe import to NX, or for any downstream application like that. Basically, if the filled PMI option or tag has been enabled, the filled PMIs will be exported into the JT file. A couple other things. Inventor files can be imported without Inventor or Inventor Viewer, and they also made it so that colors and assembly features can also be imported. And then additionally, you can, just like in the previous, changes. You can import surfaces as well as hidden bodies at the part level. So you can see in the top right, that is the model in Inventor. You've got all the colors. It's easy to distinguish all the parts from one another. In the bottom left is what that same model would have been in, or how it would have looked when imported into previous versions of Solid Edge. In 2024, you can see that the model looks pretty close to the way it did in Inventor. It includes all the colors, easy to see and differentiate between the different parts, and pretty helpful for anybody who needs to import this type of data. I don't know if this totally counts as translation, but it kind of fit in the category still, is a couple of changes to the PDF. If you need to save something as a PDF, particularly 2D drawings. First is, so in previous versions, there was a single option that was instead of the two that I'm referring to here, and it was just all sheets. Now you have two different options. One is all sheets of the same type, or all visible sheets, and they kind of do exactly what they say. So for all sheets of the same type, it will convert all of the sheets in your 2D or your draft file that are the same type as the active sheet, and it will do it in the order of left to right. And then all visible sheets will export into a PDF all of the sheets that are currently visible, in the bottom of your screen. And same as the other option, they will be in order left to right. CAD Direct, for those who aren't familiar, is a process or an option to import files that are foreign data types into Solid Edge without creating a separate Solid Edge file on your disk. So you can add it directly to your assembly. This way you can, and it remains associative. So if you have an Inventor part and something changes to that part, the Inventor part file, those changes would still be visible inside the assembly that it was added to. What they've done is this was previously, this feature and function was added in previous versions for a few select softwares, but they've added Inventor, Creo, and then also ASYS or SAT file types. And so that those types of files and files from those softwares can be added as a CAD Direct or an internal component, more specifically. Those are the changes to like some of the translation and migration that have happened for Solid Edge 2024. And this is just another thing that I wanted to kind of mention. There was a couple of changes to the Siemens Mechanical Design Bundle. This was talked about, I think, in the past couple of updates, but I wanted to, kind of give everyone a review and, talk about exactly what the Mechanical Design Bundle is. It's an offer from Siemens that bundles both Solid Edge and NX together. It gives you some more flexibility, access to some more powerful solutions at a lower cost. So more specifically, for each mechanical design bundle that an organization has, you can use either 3 Solid Edge Classic licenses or 1 NX Mach 1. So the examples at the bottom there, you could have if you had 5 mechanical design bundles, you could do 5 NX users and without any Solid Edge users, or you could do 4 NX with 3 Solid Edge users. And in that last example, you would have 3 NX users while you have 6 Solid Edge users running simultaneously. So it's that 1-to-3 ratio of Solid Edge Classic licenses to Mach 1 licenses. So what the benefit of that is a few different things. It's been shown that it's better to keep your data into a single single kernel. So the examples here, NX and Solid Edge both use Parasolid there, and it also allows data between them to be shared easily. And Solid Edge data that's imported into NX is very easy to work with. It's almost complete, and then as well as any changes that are made on the Solid Edge side will be updated when you open it again in NX, or simply refreshing it will also update any changes. And by keeping everything kind of on that singular platform, can reduce some of the operational costs by 20%, and it can be really helpful to have a lot of your data on just that singular Parasolid platform. So the reason I brought this up is because there was a few changes they made to the Solid Edge and NX interoperability. So how they work together, how data flows from Solid Edge to NX, etc., has been improved. More annotations and stack dimensions are supported better. They import to NX better. The way that dimension values are displayed is easier to read. You don't have to do it's filled text. So you don't have to change it when you bring the part into NX. It should be ready to go. And reference geometry is available, as well as like center marks and bolt hole circles and center lines. All those things will move into NX and be visible in NX when you bring data over from Solid Edge. Additionally, one other thing they've done that makes using the two together a little easier is they've made it so that the NX value-based licensing tokens are compatible with Solid Edge value-based licensing. What that means is if you have the NX tokens, you can use those to check out add-ons for Solid Edge. That would include generative design, electrical routing, simulation, etc. That does it for the changes in Solid Edge 2024. Just like I said at the beginning, this wasn't like an exhaustive list. This is the changes that we thought or that we found would be most interesting to our user base. And from talking to people, I work with several people in support, and hearing feedback. These are the ones that we thought would be most impactful. So thanks everybody for attending, and I'm going to give it back to Ashley to.
All right. So thank you for that, Jason. So that is going to conclude our presentation portion of our webinar. Again, we just want to thank you all so much for being here today, and we hope everybody took some valuable information away from this and are excited to utilize some of these functions and enhancements for themselves. Again, I just want to say before we do go into Q&A, we are going to go over some quick announcements. So first off, we would love to hear your feedback. It's what helps us grow and learn so we can continue to create valuable and beneficial webinars and events for you guys. So we are going to be sending out a survey along with the recorded webinar once this live session is completed. So if you have a couple of minutes to fill that out, we would be extremely grateful for that. And then a couple upcoming events that we have. I would just like to announce that this What's New in Solid Edge 2024 is going to be the first webinar in a series of Solid Edge webinars that we are going to be continuing. Our second Solid Edge webinar in this installment is going to be surrounding Solid Edge Design Configurator. That's going to be happening January 9th of 2024. And again, that's going to be from 10:30 to 11:30 a.m. We will drop the link in the chat for you, and of course you'll be receiving another link to sign up for it with the recorded webinar via email. So of course be on the lookout in your inbox for that. Secondly, we are going to be holding a virtual training session on PMI, and this is going to be taking place December 12th. Again, we're going to be sending out emails with more information about this training session, so definitely be on the lookout in your inboxes for that. And with some of that housekeeping out of the way, we can go ahead and get on to open Q&A. So if anybody has any questions, go ahead and drop those in the Q&A section or the chat section, doesn't matter. We're going to hit both of those. So we'll give everybody a few minutes to get those questions in there.
Yeah, I have it here. Go ahead.
All right, so our first question is going to be, do you need to populate a part in order to get the drawing of that part to show the material options? There is a couple parts to this question, so.
Yes. This question is in regards to the family parts changes. So do I need to populate a part in order to get the drawing of that part to show the material options? No, it should be part of the family members' properties. So this would be if this is in the drafting environment, you should be able to access that property in that specific member from there. The second part of that question was if you drop the master part into the file and choose a family member to place, can you get it to the material to populate in the bill of material of that assembly? Or do you have to populate the part for that? I'd have to check that specific interaction, but I don't see why you would have to. I mean, as long as you place the selected family member with that material, that material should show up. Looks like there was another question asking if there's any improvements to surface modeling. Off the top of my head, I can't think of anything specific. Like I said, this was not a complete list of changes. I know many of the improvements to like the UI and user experience also apply to that surfacing environment. So it was also asked if we can go back to the relaxed or to the compact view that 2023 had. I haven't checked specifically if there's a specific option for that, but I also believe that if you had your, if the scaling was, or basically the scaling or the UI size was changed, it would look similar to what it did in 2023. Jacob asked if I could demonstrate the lasso feature. I can't do it now. I don't have Solid Edge with me at the moment, but I can, if you're interested in it or you want to see it, feel free to reach out to us, and I'd be, happy to. For synchronous sheet metal modeling, specifically that environment, no, not off the top of my head. I know that a lot of the user experience, like the lasso tools and all of those UI changes are absolutely usable in that environment, but changes that are specific to sheet metal or synchronous sheet metal, I don't believe there are any that apply only to that environment.
All right, so we are getting close to the end of our webinar here. So if anybody has any last minute questions they want to throw in there, go ahead and do that. Of course, if you have maybe a more in-depth question, or you think of something once the webinar is over, of course, feel free to reach out to either myself or Jason, and we'll get you your answer to that question, all right? So I think that is gonna about do it for our What's New in Solid Edge 2024 webinar. Again, we want to thank everybody so much for joining in today and taking time out of your day to be here. Thank you so much, and everybody have a great rest of your day.